y'all, welcome back to my channel, A Country Gal's Kitchen. Today I am canning potatoes. Come on, let's go. Hello and thank you so much again for joining me and my canning projects. So today, like I said, we are canning potatoes. I have 20 pounds of potatoes and I've got my jars. They're hot, they're sterilized. I just put them in the dishwasher, ran them through a cycle. Since we're using the pressure canner, you do not have to water bath and, do the whole sterilization thing. But they ran through the dishwasher, they're clean, they are warm. I have my hot water here in this pan that I am going to put in my jars. But first, we are going to fill our jars with the potatoes. Now, before we do that, I am going to just take some regular table salt and I'm going to put a teaspoon of salt in each jar. These are quart jars, so we're going to do the teaspoon. If you're doing pints, you just want a half a teaspoon. Now, I say have to, you do not have to. This is totally up to you. I put the salt in there because just for a little bit of flavoring. It's not mandatory like some other recipes. And this is just regular table salt. All right, so you are going to need, with this, jars, of course. I have my lids back on my oven stovetop in a pan of hot water. They've boiled and they are ready, nice and hot. We're going to need a debubbler, a funnel, a lid lifter, and then you want a jar lifter. Now this all came in just a set that I bought. I think I bought it from Walmart a long time ago. If I were you, I recommend, if you're gonna get into this, I recommend getting a good pair of jar lifters, because you don't want these handles here. This is the part that you hang on to when you're lifting the jars. You don't want these plastic pieces coming off while you're trying to lift the hot jars out of the canner. It really messes you up for sure. Plus then you have to go and dig the pieces out of the canner. So I recommend getting a good, spend a little bit of money on the jar lifters. So that being said, we are going to get our potatoes loaded into our jars and we'll get going. Okay, I have my potatoes already cut up. They were washed, peeled, and then they've been in water overnight. I was having power outage issues, so I didn't get to film that part. So my next video, whenever I do potatoes again, I will hopefully be able to do that so you can see how I do it. It is recommended to pack these with an inch of headspace. And also you can, these are raw potatoes. So you can either, I have not blanched them. I've seen videos where people cook them for 10 minutes and then they put them in the jars. I did not do that. All the videos I have watched, they have done it raw. So, and to me, that's a little bit more work that you have to do. When you pressure can, they're gonna be cooked anyways. So I'm just filling these to about an inch of headspace. And once we put in our hot water, that's all we're gonna use. We may have to add a little bit more of the potatoes to the jars. And I am not using the water that I had the potatoes sitting in. because that water is full of starch. I have drained and rinsed the potatoes a few times. That way I can get as much starch out of there as I can. My potatoes are cubed into about 1 inch, give or take, size pieces. A lot of people have asked me why I'm canning potatoes. It seems like a lot of work. It is a lot of work, but it's also so much easier when you have your potatoes already cooked. You can just grab them off the shelf. You can make mashed potatoes. You can put them in a frying pan and fry them up. There are so many options when it comes to canned potatoes. The biggest thing is, one, I can store, several cans of potatoes for months, and I can't do that with fresh potatoes. And two, it's taken all of the work out of meal prep. I'm busy doing the farm things, and sometimes it is 8, 9 o'clock before I come in. I don't have a cook or a maid, so it is that late when I am cooking supper. So having potatoes ready to go, your green beans, having all of that stuff ready to go and not being dependent on a grocery store in this day and age is something that is my life goal. So here we are canning potatoes. Now I made up 12 jars, and this is my second batch of this 20 pounds. So I have more than just the 12 done out of 20 pounds. Okay. Some stragglers here. All right, I have all my jars full of potatoes. Now the next step is to get the water put in. All right, hang tight. Okay, we are now ready for the water. All I have is just plain water. I boiled it. It's hot. It's ready to go into our jars. So I'm just going to fill the jars up to that 1 inch of headspace. And then after I get those all filled, I'll go and debubble everything. And if you're not sure on the headspace, typically if you look at a jar, the bottom ring here up, this is the inch mark. Or you can use your debubbler. Mine has the markings on it, the 1 inch, 3/4, half, that type of thing. So you can use it for, you can put it in and see if your liquid or your contents of your jar touches the bottom of this. You could also put different herbs or seasonings in your potatoes, we just kind of, I am leaving mine blank because that way it gives me more of an open canvas to use the potatoes. You could add green beans in your potatoes, that type of thing. Okay, now I've got all my jars full of water, so I'm just going to take the debubbler and I'm just gonna poke it down in the jar all around. You wanna get as many air bubbles out as you can. That way, once your jars are sealed, there's no chance of bacteria being caught in those air bubbles. Sometimes the air bubbles can cause the seal to break. Okay, there you go. So now our next important step before we put the lids on is we need to wipe our rims with white vinegar. Now I've heard of people just wiping them down with water, but wiping with white vinegar will help you get off any starch, even water that is left on there, because you don't want anything on the tops of your rims that will cause your lids not to seal. So do not forget this very important step. Always wipe your rims with white vinegar. All right, so next step is the lids. All right, so we are ready to put on our lids. I have my lid lifter here. I'm not touching the seals. I'm taking them out of my pan. I have a pan of water here that they had boiled in, and I'm lifting them directly out of the pan and sticking them on the jar. They're wanting to stick together. Okay, now once we have our lids on, we're ready to put our rings on. And I keep for now, since I have so many, I just keep my rings on this hanger. I'm looking for something better to store them on. So if y'all have any suggestions or ideas, let me know. So with the rings, we just want to put them on fingertip tight. And everybody's fingertips are different. It doesn't have to be the exact. We just want to give the lid a little bit of pressure so that it has a way to seal. we are ready for the canner. So let's go. Okay, we are ready for our canner. So I have 2 to 3 inches of water in the bottom of my canner. I have the rack in there in the bottom because you do not want to put your jars directly on the bottom. So that is ready. I also put a splash of vinegar in there. That's important if you have hard water or just you don't want your jars cloudy. That will help your jars from being cloudy. Anytime you are a pressure canning, you need to make sure you look at your vent pipe. That is this little thing here. You want to look through it, make sure you can see all the way through it, that there's no debris in it or anything. Now, this is an all-American canner. It's the 915. It holds 7 1-quart jars. The best thing about this that I like really is that there's no gasket inside the lid that I have to make sure and maintain. The only thing I have to do is I have to put a thin layer of lubricant, and you can use olive oil, or I use just the petroleum jelly, the cheap stuff. You just coat it around. That way your lid has a seal. It helps go from the metal to metal. It gives it a seal. Okay, so I'm gonna get my jars in here and then we will get set up to get it started. Okay, I've got all of my jars in the canner. We're ready to put the lid on. So let me get set up here and I will show you how to get that done. Now, on the lid, there is an arrow, and on the pan, there is a notch. You're going to want to line that notch up with the arrow. So you put it on and turn it. There we go. Turn it so your arrow lines up with your notch. Now, to tighten it down, you're going to take the two opposites. So I have this one and this one over here. And you're gonna screw those down at the same time. You want the same amount of pressure. That way you have the same gap on each side. So we have about this much gap here. And then we have this much gap here. Now we're going to do another two opposite of each other, and we're going to do the same. And if one side is, if one side of the gap is smaller than the other, then you would loosen up the small side and tighten down the larger side. And then the final two, you just tighten those down. And I do a visual check just to make sure my gaps along around are the same. So once you have that all tightened down, you want to check your gauge. I have my heat on high. We are going to leave it on high until steam comes out of this vent hole steady. And then once it does, we're going to time it for 10 minutes. So I will be back once it's ready to start our timer for 10 minutes. Okay, I am back. Our steam has been steaming really good, constant pressure, you can see it right there. So we are going to set the timer for 10 minutes. Start that to get this steady stream of steam took about 36 minutes. So we're gonna let that work its magic for 10 minutes, and then I will be putting on the pressure regulator, and I'm gonna, at my altitude, I'm gonna use 10 pounds of pressure. So 10 minutes and we'll be back. Okay, we are back. Our 10 minutes is up. Our timer just went off. Now we are going to put our pressure regulator on, and if you've never seen one of these before, it has different poundage. So we have 5, 10, and 15. So based on your altitude, which mine is under 1,000, mine's under 800 feet, but under 1,000, you're going to use 10 pounds of pressure. So that's what I am going to put on, and we're going to stick it on right over where the steam is coming out. Now, I'm going to leave the temperature up until the first jiggle, which it shouldn't take very long, but the first jiggle, and then I'll adjust the heat to where it will keep the 10 pounds of pressure. So as soon as I have the first jiggle, I'll be back. Okay, our jiggle is jiggling. I have turned down the heat. We want to lower the temperature a little so that the jiggler will jiggle 1 to 4 times a minute. I'm going to set the timer for 40 minutes. That's what we need to process our quart jars at, 40 minutes. So once we get to that point, I'll be back. Okay, that gave us 3 jiggles in about a minute, and we're holding at about 11 pounds, which is okay. We'll just, the main thing is to watch, make sure our jiggler jiggles 1 to 4 times every minute. Turning the heat down just a little bit because that jiggle went on just a tad too long, so I turned down our heat just a tad bit more. So that's what we're looking for. Now we're just gonna process this. We have 35 more minutes, and then I'll be back. Okay, we are back, and our 40 minutes is up, so I am going to turn off the heat, and then now we just have to wait and let this depressurize to 0 naturally. So we are going to let that do that, and then I'll be back. Okay, y'all, we are down to 0, or just about. It's just a hair above. So what we're going to do now is take off our pressure regulator and let it set for 2 more minutes. And I always use a hot pad because it is hot. So we're gonna let that sit for 2 more minutes, It wasn't exactly down to 0, so there's a lot more steam coming out. So 2 minutes and I'll be back. Okay, our 2 minutes is up. So now what we need to do is slowly loosen our wing nuts. Our temperature gauge, our pressure gauge is down to 0. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna grab the opposite two and untwist. Sometimes they get a little stuck. Okay, so now taking off the lid, we want to take off the farthest part of the lid first, so it lifts up this way away from our face. Sometimes you need just a little bit of help to get the lid off. So lift it away. Okay, so now we are going to take our jar lifters and lift each jar, and I have mine setting on a towel, plus I have a rack. That one is not sealed. I'm just tipping them slightly to get all the water that's on the lid off. Doing this, you might cause some of the juice to leak out, and that might cause your seal not to seal. We shall have to wait and see. All right, here we have canned potatoes. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let these cool down on the rack and towel, and then while those are cooling down, I'm gonna process the other 4 that I have. So once these start sealing, you'll hear the pop. And then once they seal, I can take the lids off, or the rings off, and mark them and store them, and then we'll be done. All right, there you have it. I have taken the rings off. They're still hot, so I'm gonna let them cool down a little bit more before I label them, and then they'll be ready to put on the cabinet. I've got my last 4 in here. They have got to depressurize, and then I'll do the same to them. So if this helped you, if you're interested in anything else, let me know. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit that bell button so you get notified when I do new videos. All right, I hope you guys have a blessed day. Bye.